got a sick note. I got a sick note in from Blair.
Oh, and JL says
Yeah.
she's having a migraine as well.
Oh Jesus. All right. So just be me and you today then.
Okay.
Just be me and you. You can
All right.
listen to the recordings.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. So today we're gonna talk about risk, managing risk. What do you know about risk?
Just a little KYC, like when we're getting information on potential shareholders or directors, you get their
Mm-hmm.
information, and then you run you will check to see if any
Okay.
adverse. Yeah.
All right. So that part of doing the KYC, which is the AML component, that is just a small part of compliance.
Right. Okay.
Right. So in a firm, when you sit on a board, you have to start from the whole perspective, which is enterprise risk management. So most companies would have an enterprise risk management framework, and then they would have an enterprise risk management policy. And then under that policy, they would have all the various risk components with their own policies and procedures underneath it.
Right.
So it's an umbrella.
Okay.
So when you talk about risk in your notes, go to, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Go to the 6th page where it says what is enterprise risk management, ERM.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, all right. That's what ERM is, enterprise risk management. And it's defined as management's capability to manage all the business risks in pursuit of acceptable returns. So as a director, you are responsible for the company, um, making sure that the company presents to the board for approval all of the risk policies that would fall under the umbrella of enterprise risk management.
Okay.
So as a director, there's certain questions you have to ask yourself. So even though your ERM may be done by a consultant, and the consultant will come up with the framework, the consultant will come up with enterprise risk management policy itself,
Right.
and you may also outsource your other risk function, or you may have a risk department. As a director, there are certain questions you have to ask yourself so that when the documents are presented to you for approval, you know what questions to ask. You have an idea of what's missing. So you ask yourself, look at the wheel. In the middle is culture. In order for risk to work, you must have a culture. And that culture comes from the board.
Okay.
Outside of that wheel are the other factors. So coverage. Coverage means what are the risks to our business strategy and operations. And
Okay.
that's one of the first things that you do. Based upon the business that you're in, you have to decide what are the inherent risks in your business. And then based on what are the inherent risks, then you know which policies management should be presenting for approval.
Mm,
Okay? So
okay.
it's only me and you, and so I can show you how this works.
Okay.
Okay, go to the 3rd page now. You're gonna try and see if you can do these side by side. On the third page, I have listed for you major risk. You see it in the middle of the table.
Yeah, in the
Major
table,
risk,
right.
other significant risk, and unrelated risk.
Mm-hmm.
So as a director, you have to know based on your business and your strategy. You call it major risk, or you can call it inherent risk. So these are the natural risks that come from the business that you are carrying out.
Okay.
So if you're in banking business and you
Mm-hmm.
offer credit, loans, you know your major risk is credit risk.
Yes.
Because, right, because you're dealing with loans, you know you have
Mm-hmm.
to have sufficient cash in
Mm-hmm.
order to grant loans. So you
Right.
have a liquidity risk. Then you
Okay.
have a market risk because you're going to be looking at the interest rate between depositors and lending, and
Mm-hmm.
also when the bank itself makes its deposit with other banks, you have to look at that spread to make sure that you're making sufficient profit.
Okay.
Then the next one is your operational risk, and this is the actual cost for your back office to do their work. How much is it costing you? How many persons do you need to do trading settlements? How many persons you need to write loans?
Mm.
And then, yes, that's the
Okay.
risk. And included in that risk is you have to think about errors. What is the margin for errors
Mm.
in the lending section, in the operational section? And then you may have fiduciary risk, which means that you have taken on persons' funds, you are investing it on their behalf, and then in turn, credit lending it out to others. So you also have that risk of fiduciary risk, which means that there can be a suit for breach of trust or for negligence if you do not follow the orders of the clients.
Okay.
So if you were to say now that you were in the business of bottling water, what
Mm-hmm.
would be the major risk?
Um, I don't know if the consumption, no.
No. The first one you could think about is environmental risk.
Okay.
You're dealing with water.
Yeah,
You'll have environmental risk.
that's
Your
true.
next,
Yeah.
right. Your next risk would be compliance risk.
Okay.
Your compliance risk means that you have to follow all of the regulations with regard to the water being safe.
Mm. Right. Okay.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. Every time you sit on the board is based on the business that the company is in and the
Mm-hmm.
strategy. And they determine what are those risks that need to be included under your enterprise risk management framework. Of course, you'll have operational risk in a water business
Yeah.
because you got to make sure that your equipment is working properly
Right.
and that you have the right staff to carry it out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how this works.
Okay.
Now, other than these inherent risk or major risk, you also have other significant risk, which means there are other risks that you need as a part of doing business. So in the banking business, all of these other risks are risks that are attached to the business of banking, which is settlement risk, interest rate risk, country risk, transfer risk, technology risk, regulatory, reputation, and compliance risk. In the water business, other risks would also be reputation risk.
Reputation. Yeah.
You also will have technology risk because we don't process water by hand.
Mm-hmm.
So you have
No.
a technology risk. You
Machine.
would have
Yeah.
a transportation risk because the water is delivered how? By trucks.
The trucks. Yeah.
Right. So you have a transportation risk, a logistics risk.
Mhm. Okay.
Right. And then unrelated risk means risks that are totally not in your control whatsoever. And that'll be moral hazard, which means that someone could somewhere along the line taint your water and people could get sick.
Okay.
Right? You could also
Yes.
have systemic risk. You could have maybe the plastic bottles from the company that you're ordering or the company that sanitizes it. Maybe all the bottle companies uses the same one. And systemic
Mm-hmm.
risk means that you can't get sanitized bottle. Next company can't get it. The next one's a systemic risk. So then that comes to the next part of enterprise risk management, which means you should always have a business continuity plan and disaster recovery.
Yeah, yeah, super disaster. Yes, I remember that. Okay.
Right. So this is how all of this links up. When you sit on the board, and there's a section on the agenda that speaks about policies and procedures. So you have to know which policies need to be presented now, which ones can come later, and then which ones are then essential from a regulatory standpoint, which means which ones are the regulators going to look for based upon the nature of your business. Okay? So after you look at coverage, your next question is risk appetite. And that is how much risk is the company willing to take? And the level of risk that the board decides that the company is ready to take is based on the strategy. And the strategy comes from the vision, from the shareholders and the shareholders agreement as to what they're looking for. The next thing you have to look at is governance and policies, which is how good are we at overseeing risk taking. So that means that as a member of the board, you have to make sure that every risk that you've agreed that the company is willing to take, and whatever's your level of risk tolerance for each one of these risks, you have to ensure that management is presenting these policies and also providing adequate reporting on these risks. And you decide on the frequency of it. And that frequency is incorporated in the policy itself. So if you look at, in the water industry and you say, okay, having good, clean water, that's one of our inherent risks. We must always have clean water. And so you have to say, what is your risk tolerance for that? Is it 80% or is it 40%? 40% means that you could have contaminated water. You must always have good water. So aim is to get to 100%. Now to get to 100%, what other risk is tied to that? So on an ongoing basis, you would want, because board meetings are held quarterly, every quarter, you would want your risk department, whether it's internal or outsourced, to report on your inherent risk, whether they see any difficulties. Do they envision anything that can actually stop this business strategy from meeting its annual targets? The next is risk data and infrastructure. How do we ensure we have the right information to manage risk? So you have a business strategy, you have a risk appetite, which means how much you can tolerate, and you have policies and procedures that are coming. The next question you now have to look at is management giving me the information that I need to be able to report at the end of the year as to whether or not we are able to manage that risk? So the report from management should speak about the management of the risk and where there are gaps in those policies and procedures. And then, of course, what's the remedy to address it? Because the whole focus of the board is to make sure whatever is the budgeted target for the end of the year, that you actually attain it or succeed it. So the next thing is management evaluation and communication. How do we determine the size and scope of the risk and report the results? So again, it's now putting at the end of each board meeting, we should be able, as a board of directors, to be able to say conclusively that management is managing the risk, that they are measuring it, and we are able to communicate that the company is running in the manner in which we perceive that we will meet our target. And then there is the control environment. How well do we manage the risk? And the control environment comes from the audit department. Audit job is to look and see how the actual environment is being controlled. Are the policies and procedures being adhered to? What do we need to do to make it better? So that comes from your audit reports. And then based on the audit reports, management should be able to say, these things that were found by audit are being addressed. Or the company is in need of updated infrastructure.
Okay.
Right. Or if you're looking from a bank, you could say, okay, we are not able to achieve our credit targets because our staff themselves are not adequately trained, or the market has shifted. We're now in COVID. So we're in COVID now. We have to figure out how do we reach the target market in order to grant more loans, which is totally different. You may have to change your whole personnel. No, it's serious. This is the kind of thing that a board should look at. A board has to sit down and say, okay, they have to look at it and say, okay, we were giving loans before. So they'll just go down the list and just call people, or they'll just say when someone come in, well, so-and-so, I see you have a loan. Are you interested? This is a different time. So you have to take a different approach.
Right. But nowadays, so they're not even hardly entertaining you with any loans because of the COVID.
So what is that telling you? What is that telling you? That's telling you that their risk appetite has decreased.
Decreased, yes.
Yes. Their risk appetite has decreased. But now look at it now. If you were sitting on the board, right? The risk appetite has decreased because you're saying a lot of people are not working. A lot of people are not getting loans. So how are you going to meet your target for the end of the year?
Right. I guess you'll have the lower payments. I don't know what they would do.
Yeah, but if you're sitting on the board, you have to have some ideas.
Yeah, that's where these policies come in.
No, we ain't gonna do policy now. What they're gonna have to do is the CFO has to go back to the very first question of what I spoke about, business strategy. The CEO is gonna have to take that business strategy and make amendments to it and present it to the board. Okay, so the CEO is gonna say, all right, now we can't target those people no more. Our target and our profit for this year is $1 million or 1.5 million. How are we going to get it? And they have to come up with something. The board then, the directors sit around the table and see whether or not that plan is actually attainable.
Okay.
And you know that the shareholders are waiting on a dividend. They may not get the dollar they was looking for, but they don't expect to get zero.
Yes, they wait on something.
They're waiting on something.
Yeah.
And this is a critical part right now for most organizations. And this whole enterprise and risk management, they don't look at. And that's why you see a lot of companies will fail during the pandemic.
Yes.
Because you have to go back to the drawing board and you now have to think about what are your new risks. One of the risks is that your clients will not pay.
Exactly. And how do you get them to pay because they're not working?
But that's another thing. So you have to look at your existing loans on your book. You then have to look at future loans to come on your book. You now have to change your target market. Who is actually working?
Working, right.
And then who is working, or out of that, who can you target?
What can I offer them?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So the government just did the professional sector, remember? I think the government just did an area for professional sector. So if I was running my own lending institution, I would piggyback on that.
Okay.
Let me see how many people are applying to the government to get those properties. You see, every little green that drops, you got to follow it.
True.
So that's one market you could look at. In the paper this week, they said that real estate in Exuma is picking up. People are buying. I'm boarding the plane. Elutra, whatever, whatever island. I go in there to see what's happening.
Man, I saw that.
Now you see what I mean?
Yes.
The opportunities are there, but you have to change your strategy. And then when you change your strategy, you have to think about the risk of going in that market. Am I going in that market just until the pandemic will finish, which means I'm only offering short-term loans?
Right.
Or am I going in right? Am I going in right? Going in there to offer loans to foreigners? Or is there an opportunity for me to offer loans to local Bahamians? And which job sector do I feel more secure in? Because then I can increase my risk appetite for that area.
Yeah.
Then let me look at, right. It's a lot to be thinking about from the management perspective. But when you're sitting on the board, you yourself have to come up with some ideas. So if you're sitting on the board and you're looking at what management have presented, and you're reading your paper, and you're reading other things that are happening internationally, you also have the opportunity as a board member to throw out some ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. Because like you said, the shareholders are waiting on their dividend.
They're waiting on their dividends. And of course, management is also waiting on their bonus.
Okay. So they got to
Okay.
come up with strategy, like business strategy.
Yes. And with COVID, it means that a lot of people are working remotely. What is the likelihood of persons working remotely doing that now for the future 2 to 3 years? They're not on the job, and they're on the job, but not in the job. They're working from home.
Exactly. They're still employed.
They're still employed.
Yeah.
And that's another area you can look at. People are home. The remote part will continue. We're now in the third wave, the Delta wave. People may want to add on to their homes.
Exactly.
Make
You want
a
to put on
room
an
bigger.
office? Yeah.
Put on an now you see. But these people in the banks don't be thinking. Because
No.
you can walk in a bank right now and say you want to add on an office and they run you out.
Yeah. They ain't thinking as far. They ain't thinking far.
No.
Yeah.
And that's this whole enterprise risk is what it is about. Looking at all of the risk in your business and being able to change your business strategy as things change. And it's a culture, which means that even the man who stands at the door, if he is employed by the company, should be able to walk into that CEO office or that manager's office and make a suggestion.
I agree.
That's the only way, and that's sure. But when you have a culture where everybody says only decisions are made at this level, your organization will not grow. Because the younger people, the younger people see the changes in their age bracket.
Yes.
And they're the ones that you need to be reaching out to, and you need to listen to them. Sometimes some things don't make any sense, but you jot it down for the future.
Right.
But sometimes it makes sense because they know what they're looking for.
Right. Because they're the next generation.
Right. I even have another brilliant idea, but it requires a lot of money. If I was sitting on the board of the Island Luck Group, know what I would do? I would start with the first community. Yes, ma'am.
Look like me and your brain working together.
Yes. 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. So it'd be just like when you go to Japan or China. You have a 6 or 8 story building, but they're actual apartment like houses, or even like in New York.
Wow.
They have like 3 stories. And guess what? If you buy one that is a 3 story, you could sublet your first floor.
What?
Yeah, because it's 3 bedrooms. So there's a bedroom on each. There's a bedroom on each floor. A bedroom, kitchen, or whatever. Depends on how you design it. But you could put the first floor could be like a 1 bedroom flat. The second floor could be like a 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom with a kitchen, but the third floor could just be a patio on the roof, maybe a sitting room, a study room. But I'm saying is when you buy that whole 3 bedroom unit. You could rent out your bottom.
Exactly.
And these are the things that when you look and you review other countries around the world internationally, you find out that when they have areas like that, people, when they come back with the amount of wealth that these Bahamians have, that is what they do. They build these nice condominiums or housing complexes. So people will move out of our houses, and those in the wooden houses and small funny ones will move into the homes that we have.
Yes.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
But but it all comes down to business strategy.
Strategy, yeah.
It's business strategy. So when you sit on the board, it's not that you're coming to go and sit down, hear what the people have to say, flip the pages, and collect your fees. No, it's all about strategy.
Right.
And you have to be able to give direction.
Serious thing.
Yeah, it is a serious thing. And then the next 2 questions is, what are we doing about the risk? It means that, let's say if you had an operational loss, management has to report to the board how we addressing that risk. Are we replacing a part? Was the problem due to a staff? Was it negligence? What happened? So that it doesn't repeat itself. There's a cost involved. And then the next thing is, what else can go wrong and how are risks interconnected? And that's stress testing. So let's just say you are looking at systemic risk and you realize that, guess what? On an average basis, we only have 100 extra bottles. So then you said, what happened if competitor number 1 cannot get any bottles? Can we meet their demand? Their customers? Can we get that money for that extra week? And then you say, what if they're out for like 2 or 3 weeks? Can we meet that demand? So those are the kind of things you look at. So if I move from the water now, when I move into banking, this is the same thing. What else can go wrong and how are risk interconnected? Stress testing. So what they look at is, okay, we're gonna start a lending program, and we're gonna offer X rate. After they run it for the first time, they're the first ones in the market. So the first horse of the race always get his head out front.
Yes.
But then guess what? Another bank says we have a lot of cash too. We could target that same market. Let's take our interest rate down half a notch. Offer them a savings plan.
Yes.
Offer them a ability to win. Yeah. Offer them ISU. Offer them ability to win a cruise in Europe. You see what I mean? Make it more attractive.
Right. That's competition.
So, yes. So then you have to think about what are the things that could go wrong. A lot of things could go wrong. Your pipeline could automatically move from being a pipeline with 100 applications to a pipeline with 10. So these are the things you have to consider.
Okay. Interesting.
Now let's go back to the yes. It's a good area to go in.
Yeah.
In terms of risk, if you wanted to be a risk professional, but you get a little bit of everything when you sit on the board.
Okay.
A little bit of everything. So when you sit in that chair, you have to think about what poses a threat to this business. And it doesn't matter whether or not the board you're sitting on is a government board or a private board. Whatever board it is, there are threats to that business.
True.
So risk management is the process of dealing with those threats. It's a tool that allows these risks to be managed in an environment which is uncertain.
Uncertain.
Yes, uncertain. because things change all the time.
Mm.
And risk intelligence is the capacity to learn about risk from experience and then use that knowledge to solve problems which require an understanding of risk. So risk intelligence is to effectively and efficiently manage risks to existing assets and future growth. If you look at history, you would see in some industries why they died out is because the business owners never took effect the change of technology on their business. So today we are faced not just with the change in technology, but we also have to look at regulatory compliance challenges, and they're growing every day.
Every day.
Yes, every day. And then add on top of that now, this pandemic.
Can you also throw like natural disasters in there too as a risk as well? Or no?
Yes, that's a part. Remember I told you, and in an organization, after you've done all your risk, you must have a BCP and disaster recovery. That's where they fall.
Yeah, that's a disaster, right?
Right. You need business continuity. That's every day. Like when the internet keep dropping, you have to make sure you have more than one backup in order to have that continuity.
Yeah.
Business continuity plan is also when on a daily basis, if I'm a trader, there's a backup for me if I don't come to work. And if I don't come and the next person doesn't come, as you see, at the pandemic happened, someone else has to be able to do the work. True. And so to me, the pandemic showed you that you have to cross-train everybody. Everybody has to be, it's not my job, but in the event there's a crunch time, everyone can fill in to a certain extent that the company still operates.
I agree.
It may not be operating at 100%, but it's operating to the point that as long as that person is not inside the building, they really don't know the struggles that is going on, but things are happening. So that's another thing that companies have to look at. They have to look at what risk they face now in the pandemic, and is an opportunity now to try to cross-train everybody to the point that the company can function. You don't know who's going to get COVID next.
True.
You don't know who's going to die.
No.
Which means they're permanently gone. All the information in their head is gone.
That's why you have to train everyone.
Yes. Before time, people wouldn't do all of that. They say, oh, that's not necessary because you're trying to take my job. But it's not a matter of taking the job anymore. It's all about business continuity.
That's right.
So again, if you look at my wheel, it comes to culture. Yes, you have to change the culture of the organization. And that's what the pandemic has done. The pandemic has shown that there are a lot of other risks in your organization, and you have to be prepared for it. And that's why a lot of people go to work even though they're sick. Who's going to do it for me? Oh, I have to go. Oh, no one else to do it. And then what happened? They infect, instead of one person, everybody else. 5 and 10.
And the business got closed down.
Ah, there you go. So you see how important it is when you're talking about risk, managing risk, knowing your risk. So risk governance is the strategic decision-making and risk oversight that is led by the board. That is the board's job, risk governance. Whenever you see that word governance, governance is always related to the board and how they actually operate the company. Risk infrastructure is, of course, the enterprise risk management program. And then risk ownership means identifying, monitoring, measuring, and reporting on specific risk. So each risk has an owner. Like how you were saying with the KYC,
Yes.
The ownership of that is
Compliance.
with compliance, right?
Right.
Because that is one component of compliance.
Mm-hmm.
So risk governance directs and defines acceptable levels of risk, monitors strategic alignment, and sets overall risk expectation. Risk ownership is what risk governance relies on to execute risk intelligence. So that sentence means that the board is relying on whichever department the risk falls under to provide whatever information they need in order to make decisions.
Okay.
So in this pandemic time, that's very important to board because I need to know if the CFO is sick, who could run that department?
Right.
Can that person take over the next minute?
Mm-hmm.
And that's and I think by the time the dust settles, we're gonna find a lot of companies are gonna be faced with these questions and don't have the answers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because sometimes you could run the company without all of these people for a certain length of time. But then when it really comes down to running the company properly now, how are they going to do it when all the key people are gone?
Mm.
So risk infrastructure and management is comprised of the three pillars of people, processes, and technology. And it forms the essential link, risk governance and risk ownership. So if you look at any organization, it looks just like this box.
Mm.
You always have the first line. In a bank, that's the tellers or the
Right.
customer support side.
Okay.
In a red store, that could be the sales girls.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the second line, that's the risk management function. And then the third line is your internal and external audit. So the second line risk management function, that's your risk and that's your compliance.
Mm.
Those three areas, they're responsible for identifying risk, evaluating it, and managing it. Then you have risk management committee, audit committee, and the board. And that's the risk acceptance and monitoring part of it, and the reporting. And notice on the left side, I have the appetite.
Yes.
And then the group-wide policies and divisional policies. So we really did the type of risk. And the only note I have under that chart there is that if a company is a part of a group, the risk management activities are developed on an enterprise level and influenced by various types of pressure. And the company may seek to determine if its risk management strategy and infrastructure are adequate in comparison with peers or internal audit reports, or pressures due to compliance or regulatory changes. Because if you're a part of a group, your compliance and regulatory changes are different, depends on the jurisdiction that you're in.
Yeah.
Some have more risk than others.
Mm-hmm.
And then some, you're right. And then some,
Demographics.
it depends on, right, the risk levels that the FATF gives them, or the CFATF.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of, it's a lot of risk you have to think about. And like in the Bahamas with the pressure of de-risking, you have to think about de-risking clients. They think about de-risking countries, entities. So the trend across industries is to establish an enterprise risk management program, which is implemented in and across an organization, including within the company's culture. So then I give you a risk management process, and it starts with the risk assessment. So this is how this works. Let's say you have a new product you want to introduce to them to your customers.
Okay.
Before that product is launched, you have to do a risk assessment. And that's what this whole process is.
Okay.
So it starts right at the very, where you see the word risk assessment, it starts there. First, you have to identify what are the risks with this product. Then the next thing is you have to analyze that risk. Then you have to evaluate it. After you've done that, then you have the monitoring and review. How often you're going to be reviewing this whole process with this risk? How you going to monitor it? And then you have the risk treatment. And of course, there's communication and consultation, which means that when you prepared your risk assessment, you share that with other departments to see if there's anything that is missing.
Okay.
And then once that risk has been identified and reviewed, then it goes to compliance for their input as to whether all of the risks have been identified and whether or not they agree that the product should be launched. So the first thing is they have to identify the risk. So the risk is, again, the risk is, if you're looking at the product, what are the risks? Is it liquidity risk? Is it AML risk? Terrorist financing risk? Could be corruption. Could be the product may require more
research,
regulatory risk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. You have regulatory risk. It could also be more reputational risk. You could have cross-jurisdiction risk, cross-border. So all these things have to be assessed. Then your mitigation is identifying and applying the measures to mitigate against these risks that comes from your assessment. So how are you going to address cross-border risk? You may decide that, guess what? We need to get a lawyer in that jurisdiction to see if we were to sell these products to those clients from that jurisdiction, whether or not we be violating any local laws.
Okay.
Yes. And then monitoring. So you then have to decide as when you're going to review the risk profile, whether you're going to do it quarterly or you're going to do it semi-annually. And how you're going to do it. You're going to use a management, technological tool, or is it going to be a part of the agenda every quarter for the compliance committee? So it's different ways in which you can do your monitoring. And then documentation is designing and implementing policies and procedures that cover this risk. And of course, you have to be able to report to the board.
That's the last stop, the board.
Yes. And that cycle continues, every quarter.
Okay.
Every quarter, there should be something that you have to report on.
Yes, it should be.
Yeah. It's never static.
Yeah. If it stays the same, something ain't right.
If it stays the same, that means that people are not doing anything.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Red flag.
Not if you have a company that's actually running.
That's right.
Exactly. So having a enterprise risk management policy,
yes,
it benefits the company because you reduce your fines, you try to get less operational downtime. You also could reduce your legal fees.
Right.
You could also have less brand reputational losses because you're trying to manage your risk. And another thing you have to look at, if you are able to identify your risk and manage your risk all the way up to the policies and the board, then you can also be more attractive for funding.
Mm. Okay.
Didn't think of that, right?
Yeah.
And another way corporations try to reduce their, at least to show that they are managing their risk, is what they try to do is they make set a target as to the annual amount of loss that they would expect for the year. So they'll tell you have 0 tolerance or 1% tolerance for operational losses.
Okay. So
and that
so that's
shows
money
that,
put aside?
yes, so they're saying that they are proficient, that they're minimizing those risks, whereby they will not make any losses.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's smart.
Yeah, a lot of companies do that now.
Mm.
That's what they do.
Mm.
Yeah. So corporate governance is when you talk about the shareholders and the board. With a public company, you know, it's different. Because a public company means it's anybody from any walks of life.
Right.
But with a private company, it could be a family who are the shareholders, and some of those family can be on the board and act as directors.
Okay.
And note that directors are subject to fiduciary duty. A shareholder does not have fiduciary duties.
Right.
So in large public companies, the board has a supervisory role with its powers being delegated to executive management. Shareholders, on the other hand, focus on capital growth and income and ensuring that the composition of the boards are balanced. And that's another thing that's key, having a balanced board. Because if your board isn't balanced, you're not going to achieve your strategic objective.
Okay.
Yeah, no one is going to add any value. You understand what I mean?
For the public company, you could give me an example.
Okay, even if it's a private company,
Mm.
if you let's say you're doing the water company again, that's always a simple answer. So you have a board. So on the board, you have 2 of the shareholders as directors. Okay, 2 of the shareholders are there. So you're running a water company. You'd want to have a lawyer on your board. You'd want to have environmentalists on your board.
Yes.
You'd want to have an engineer on your board. I would also try and get me a technology expert. Maybe even someone international who could tell me what other companies around the world are doing in the water distribution area so that I can keep abreast of what's happening. But that's what when I say you want a balanced, when I say you want a balanced board, you want the members of the board to be able to add value to the growth of the company.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Get you.
So keeping abreast of issues related to corporate governance, international bodies have developed a framework which is intended to address conduct of business, the structure of boards, duties and responsibilities of directors, and disclosures. So all that means is that under corporate governance, that is like a topic of its own. And under corporate governance, it talks about the board itself, the structure of the board, the duties and responsibilities of the directors, which is a fiduciary one. And it also speaks about stakeholders, and stakeholders are the employees, the creditors, the suppliers. And then they also talk about disclosure, which means reporting either through the annual report or audited financials, on the actual company itself. So the definition of corporate governance, according to OECD, is a set of relationships between a company's management, its board, its shareholders, and other stakeholders. Corporate governance also provides the structure through which the objectives of the company are set and the means of attaining those objectives and monitoring performance are determined. So good corporate governance should provide proper incentives for the board and management to pursue objectives that are in the interest of the company and the shareholders and should facilitate effective monitoring, thereby encouraging firms to use resources more efficiently. Corporate governance provides, go ahead.
So, no, I say when they say proper incentives, does this include like pay and bonuses and stuff like that, or what? Is it good corporate governance should provide proper incentives for the board?
No, they don't get bonuses.
Okay.
Bonus management get bonuses.
Okay.
That is approved by the board.
So this proper incentives is just salary, or what is it they're referring to?
Corporate governance should provide proper incentives for the board. Good corporate governance means that the board is following the strategy and the rules that are set up, which means that when they sit on the board, they're making sure that when management present to them, the company is always in compliance. There are no fines.
Okay.
That's the proper incentive. Because if they start getting fines, that means that the company is incurring losses. And that means that the shareholders cannot be paid.
Okay.
Board members don't get incentive. They're paid quarterly.
Okay.
A stipend. That's it. Management get bonuses.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, they just get the rate. So the good corporate governance and providing proper incentives means that the board itself is demonstrating that it's not incurring any losses.
Okay.
They're keeping risk at a minimum.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but it's not to do with money.
Oh.
No, not money. No.
Okay. All right.
No. So corporate governance provides a critical underpinning for the relationships, the responsibilities, and reporting lines for the board. So what that means is that when you are on the board, if you are if you're actually carrying out good corporate governance, you have an organizational chart and it shows the reporting lines of every employee in that organization.
Okay.
And that also includes the stakeholders and the shareholders and employees and the clients and everybody else. And then it says the stakeholders are for whom an effective corporate governance regime operates and benefits. That's the shareholders themselves, the employees, the investors, service providers or suppliers, and the community at large. Because now in companies they have a corporate responsibilities for the communities in which they operate. It has to be seen that you're actually giving back to the community.
Yes.
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 So that's why you always see in the papers at certain times, you'll see the banks giving back. And they have the big board with a check.
Yeah, and the law firms.
And the law firms give.
Yeah.
Now some of the companies do give, but they just don't report it.
Okay. So they have to report it to?
They report it to their stakeholders.
Oh, okay.
So employees will know. The shareholders will know. Anyone who invests in the company knows. That's their stakeholders. And then suppliers.
Oh, okay.
Right. So sometimes you see that giving back to a community like school supplies.
Yeah.
Right. It's different. Okay. Each company, they decide as to where their social responsibility will lie. Some will say they're only giving to approved charities. Some will say they're going to be working with environmental issues. So they have categories. It's not pick anything from anywhere. It's not
Okay.
random. No. They decide what they're going to do. Some will say we're only going to do it for the educational purposes for people in certain communities. And then they actually decide which communities they're going to sponsor. And that's what they stick to. So it's not just anything, oh, something is coming up today, let's go and get, no. It's all strategic.
Okay.
Yeah. So everything is about building a community and in a particular sector. So at the heart of this corporate, good corporate governance and a proper understanding and appreciation and practice of the high standard of the duty of care. Did I miss a page?
No.
I didn't? Okay.
No.
My page is unnumbered. That's why I asked.
No, neither am I.
And care expected of directors and senior management and a prudent discharge of their duties and responsibilities internally and externally within the ambit of the law and international standards. So a comprehensive understanding of their responsibilities and accountabilities by directors and senior management and clear, consistent communication of the process of good corporate governance. So that means that senior management must know the path that policies must follow in order for it to be approved.
Okay.
An integral part of the mandate of directors and senior management is the identification, measurement, monitoring, control, and minimization of various risks to an organization. And depending upon its size, the nature of its business, the clientele, and the vulnerabilities of its products and services, internal controls, systems, and processes to internal or external threat of money laundering, fraud, collusion, impropriety, and overall legal or regulatory liability. Such measurable criteria as the accuracy, reliability, timeliness, relevancy, and thoroughness of an organization's risk management system, and the frequency, effectiveness, and productivity with which directors and senior management are able to obtain information regarding these measurements are critical to the soundness of corporate governance program. And all that is saying there is that when senior management reports to the board, the information have to be timely. It has to be relevant. It has to be accurate. The board must be able to rely on the statements and opinion that is given by management, which means that management does not omit things that are material. Because the board is relying on the report. Let's just say there was an operational loss and the board and management reported to the board, but they failed to include in that report that the loss was actually done by 3 persons and not 2. And now the board is making a decision now based upon, let's say the gravity of it, that the loss is, I don't know, $60,000. And the board is saying now, we cannot tolerate a loss like this again. And reading how the incident occurred, it appears as if these 2 persons were negligent. And I think a decision should be made to terminate them.
Exactly.
Right? So here it is now, the board is relying on the report that was sent by management. But the report is not thorough because there were 3 persons.
Yeah.
Or we whereby the loss of 60,000 forgot didn't include the initial error that occurred, which was another additional 5,000. You see what I'm saying? So that's why they're saying that when management reports to the board, that information has to be accurate, reliable, timely, relevant, and thorough.
Okay.
So if you are regulated by the Central Bank or the Securities Commission, They have corporate governance guidelines to help the business. Have you ever read it?
No, I've never read it.
Oh, you need to read it then.
Okay.
I've given you some highlights. It's on the central bank website.
Okay. I'll read that one.
Yeah, you need to read it. And so what it does is it sets out the duties and responsibilities of senior management and the duties and responsibility of the board. It also gives the board, yes, it gives the board suggestions as to various committees it can establish to assist the board in attaining good corporate governance. They say that the corporate governance structure, your framework, is based upon the size and the nature of your business and the complexity of your transactions. What it requires as a regulated entity is that 120 days at the end of your calendar year, you have to certify that based upon the advice from management, you have assessed and documented the effectiveness of your corporate governance processes and the success of it.
Okay.
You also have to say whether or not there are any material deficiencies, weaknesses, or any problems that have been identified in your risk management assessment and monitoring during the year.
This is mandatory?
Yes.
This for only regulated companies with the central bank.
Regulated with the Central Bank and Securities Commission.
Okay.
If there are deficiencies, you have to present an action plan and a timetable to put it in place. So the board annually, they have to document whether their corporate governance process has been implemented effectively and has been successfully enabled them to achieve their overall business goals and objectives. So your annual corporate governance certification cannot say that you have met all your business goals and objectives if you are incurring a loss. Licensees should generally assess whether their overall control environment, compliance culture, policies and procedures, risk management systems are appropriate and effective in meeting and protecting the interests of its stakeholders, particularly its shareholders and clients. So this is a document that is prepared by management and sent to the board for sign off. The board, when they're reviewing this attestation, has to be mindful of what they have approved during the year, because they're now telling the regulator that all of these things are in place and that they are satisfied with it. An external auditor must be engaged by the licensee to annually review and assess the methodology followed by the board in analyzing and monitoring the organization's corporate governance process, and the auditor must report directly to the board and the inspector of banks on any discrepancies with the board's risk management assessment. Now, the next thing is the duty of confidentiality. Under the Banks and Trust Companies Regulations Act, the Bahamas has actually enshrined the common law duty of confidentiality in the legislation. So we know that the common law duty was found in the case of Turnier. You ever heard about that case?
No, Turnier.
Oh,
that's not local. That's not local, right?
No.
Turnier.
But all bankers know that case.
Oh, that's why I'm not in the banking. That's why I know.
That's why you don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because if you were in banking, you would know.
Yeah.
So this is a common law case. You know, common law means case law. and it's a landmark case in the United Kingdom.
Oh,
It was ruled in 1924.
how do you spell it, Turnia?
TOURNIER, one word, then put a V, national,
Mm-hmm.
provincial, PROVINCIAL, and Union Bank of England.
Okay.
You put it in the computer or you writing it down? Which one?
No, I'm writing it. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
I'm
So
gonna
in
read
that
it
case,
later.
okay, make sure see if you can get the full case. So in that case, it was a gentleman who went to get some money. And what the bank did was when they called his employer, they told the employer he had a gambling problem.
Oh, Lord.
So what the bank did is it disclosed to the customer's employer the fact that one of the customer's unpaid checks was drawn in favor of a bookmaker's account, gambling. So as a result, the employer didn't renew his contract. So sued the company. And when he sued the company, the court held that confidentiality was an implied term of the customer's contract, and that any breach could give rise to liability and damages if loss resulted. So what that means is this: when you open an account at the bank,
Right.
you open that account based on a contract.
Mm-hmm.
And that contract between you and the bank, by law, certain duties arises to the bank, and
Okay.
certain duties arises to the customer automatically. So that's why he says it is an implied term. So at that time in 1924, the court said that the only way a bank can give out a customer's information is by law,
By law. Mm-hmm.
or if he has a public duty, or if it is in the interest of the bank, or if the client has consented.
Mm.
So unless it's one of those four, he cannot give out your information. So what the Bahamas has done is it doesn't rely on the Turnier case anymore. It put it in its act.
Okay.
It is law in the Bahamas. So when you hear them talk all the time, but Bahamas and the secrecy,
Uh-huh.
you get them saying that all the time, right? Bahamas
Yeah.
has secrecy laws. Okay.
Yes.
They're referring to that same section in the Banks and Trust Companies Regulations Act, which states that you cannot get information on any client unless you fall under one of these four exceptions.
Okay.
That is law in the Bahamas. So generally, the duty is a fiduciary duty, which means that you could be sued. Where a
Exactly.
banker owes the customer, the banker owes the customer, and upon which he can be sued for breach of contract for unlawful or unauthorized disclosure of information to a third party. And that third party could be your spouse, your relatives,
Mm-hmm.
another bank, another trust company, a credit union, any other unauthorized parties, depending upon the nature and the scope of the banking relationship. So if you
Mm-hmm.
open an account with just you and the bank, no one else is party to that contract.
Exactly. They can't come ask for no information.
No, none. None.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Okay.
duty of confidentiality does not only apply to a customer's account information, but also extends to information relating to a customer's identity, assets, liabilities, and financial affairs.
Mm.
This section here changed. I have to change that number.
Okay.
they have a new act.
What's the
So
number?
the act, no, we have
Oh,
section 19.2. I have to change that because
okay.
they have a
Oh,
new,
you don't know it
yeah, they
yet?
just, no, I have to look it up. Yeah, they just did a
Okay.
new
Okay.
act. So
Okay.
the act allows information that is approved by the inspector in accordance with such information specified by the inspector to be transmitted from a licensee to its head office. And that's only for what they call for collation and synthesis. So say if they have a subsidiary in the Bahamas and they're
Mm-hmm.
doing an annual report, of course
Yeah.
they need the actual
Information.
balances, not the names of the people. It goes
Oh,
by balances. So
okay.
they'll say like, we have total loans amounting to X millions. But there are
Uh-huh.
no names there. It's just the
Okay.
balances that goes, right?
Oh.
The act also allows the governor to provide information on the beneficial owners, the directors, officers, and operations of any bank or trust company to another supervisory authority, which is responsible for regulating the head office of the licensee, and again for consolidated supervision.
Mm.
The governor has the power to provide that information to domestic regulatory authorities also. This means he could pass it on to the Securities Commission or to the Gaming Authority, anyone who is a
And
domestic regulator.
this is the governor of the central bank. You're
Yes.
referring to? Okay.
So under the exception, the first one is compulsion of law. What do you think that means?
Compulsion of law. Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that you have to do.
Like what? Think about it. It's a compulsion of law.
Oh, law, you have to
Yes, it's
do
something you have to
something.
do.
It's the second page, right?
Mm-hmm. It ain't in your notes.
Oh,
Ha
it's compulsory. Um, to provide, is it to provide your personal information? I don't know.
Yep. Compulsion of law means that if you get a request from an attorney general's office or from the police,
Mm-hmm.
you have to provide it. On the other hand, you have a compulsion under the Proceeds of Crime Act. If you see something and you have reasonable suspicion,
Mm.
under the Proceeds of Crime Act, where
Yes.
you know whoever it is, by
Mm-hmm.
law, you have to report it. If you
Okay.
are an auditor and you see something that looks suspicious, you have a duty to report it. That's compulsion by law.
Mm.
In the public's interest means that there is something that is going on in the community. And let's just say the bank then realized that one of its customers is a part of whatever it is that is going on. And they can release that information to the police or to the defense force
Mm-hmm.
as a matter of public interest.
Okay.
Then the bank can do it on its own interest. If the bank feel that there is a customer
Mm-hmm.
and that customer is acting in a manner that's detriment to the interests of the bank
Yes.
can disclose that to the police.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Yeah, because they see like some kind of laundering or something like.
Yeah. And then with the express or implied consent of the customer, when you look at when you sign those terms and conditions, when you open an account, you must read
Right.
them very carefully.
That's it.
Because in there, you may be giving some express consent to the bank
True.
to share your confidential information with other parties.
Mm. But if that's in there, I think how can you come out of that clause?
Again,
Oh.
because you've signed for it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no, I'm saying prior to signing, there's
Well,
no way around that.
if you don't like the terms, then you don't open the account.
Yeah. Go somewhere else.
Go somewhere else. So the duty of confidentiality is one of the pivotal underpinning of the Bahamian financial services industry. So you see, that's why we're constantly under attack. Because you see now they came up with the beneficial owners. They came up with the economic substance. All of this is the way to get around this confidentiality. Internationally, they just want to know, guess what? Does Mary Sue have an account there? And what's the balance? That's all they want to know. How long they've been there.
They want to find out also if they're paying taxes in their country as well. Is that a part of it as well?
No, they know who's paying taxes. They want to know who's not paying taxes. That's what they want.
Yeah, who's evading?
And so now you see, then comes the pandemic. We could actually do a conspiracy theory on this, you know. Because here comes the pandemic now. A lot of these people have died. We don't know who's died yet internationally. But then here comes, and then here comes now that these countries need money. Where are they going to get it from? Okay. So they needed money before the pandemic. Then the pandemic came, they need more money. So what do you think is going to happen? More pressure. Yes, more pressure.
So if they find out that Mary Sue is evading taxes and they, you know, they're in the Bahamas, so how are they going to get that funds? They have right to get that funds that they have here?
It's a crime in their country. So this is how it works. It's July, August every year. Compliance has to report on all balances over a certain threshold. You have CRS, that's going to the European market and China and Russia, all those who we have signed a treaty with. And then you have FATCA, which is the US clients. So that information goes back to those countries.
Okay.
And every account that they have that meet the threshold. If when it gets there and they start going through it, they say, hold on, Mary Sue isn't even on our list. But she has an account in the Bahamas for $250,000. We get a report coming in from Cayman. She have an account there with $350,000. Because they're getting it from all over the world.
Yes.
And they would then approach our Attorney General's office. And they'll ask for particulars on these accounts held at these banks under this name.
Okay. Wow. A lot of work. So they collate this information through the beneficial ownership through the banks, or will they pull this information?
There's different pieces of legislation. FATCA is uploaded in the government portal by each bank and securities.
Okay.
And when it goes into that portal, it goes to the government portal and the government sends it off to the United States.
And this is only for the US citizens, that's not for local citizens?
No, only US.
Oh, okay.
That goes to the IRS. Then the banks also have to report to CRS. That's called Common Reporting Standards. Every bank and security firm have to then report their CRS to the government portal. And that government portal and the countries you report to is based on the countries that we have signed the tax treaties with.
Yes.
So as long as you have a client that's from one of those countries and they meet the minimum threshold requirements, they have to be reported. And so those are uploaded in the government portal, and then the government takes a button and they press. All go into Russia, all go in Switzerland, all go in here, all go in there. And then you start getting requests from the Attorney General's office. that this country is looking for this client. They want to know the balances.
Okay.
And if that person did not report those monies, they're gonna have to make some arrangements, or they go in jail. The money is confiscated.
Go on to their country.
Uh-huh.
And nothing stay here.
Mm-mm.
Not even a little percentage.
No.
My God.
That don't happen.
It's a serious thing, you know.
Well, okay. And that's what I'm telling you now. So imagine in the next year to 2 years, when the dust has settled on this pandemic, their countries will need even more money.
Yeah.
Okay. So you think they have time to fool around with us by saying, oh, no. We're not changing our laws. No, they want the money.
Yeah, they want it now.
Now we need to find out where the Bahamian money is.
Never see more offshore coast.
That's what we need to find out. We need to find out where our money is.
Oh, Lord. We need it.
Yeah, we need it.
Oh, God.
Okay. So, along with this duty of confidentiality under the Banks and Trust Companies Regulations Act, we also have data protection. They go hand in hand. The data protection was designed to protect the privacy of personal information on individuals, particularly consumers, locally and jurisdictionally. So that means that anybody who collects and uses personal data of individuals, they have to actually be in compliance with the Data Protection Act.
Cover under that as well?
It doesn't matter where there's a bank, there's a food store, is a lab, the doctor's office, all are covered.
Okay. Oh, okay. That's
as
broad.
long as you house people's personal information, you are covered under the Data Protection Act.
Okay.
Right. And the Data Protection Act is not just here in the Bahamas, it's international. Yeah. It's called the Privacy Principles. And it's established again under the OECD. And it's talking about the transfer of people's information, not just internally in the Bahamas, but also cross-border. So one of the objectives is that the primary objective of the Data Protection Act is to ensure that information is obtained by fair and lawful means, and that is used in a manner consistent with that for which it was collected. And that's the key to this whole data protection, is that your information cannot be used for another purpose for which for which it was intended.
Right.
So personal data means information relating to a living individual who can be identified either from the data or from the data in connection with other information in the possession or control of the data controller. And the data controller is the person who is actually housing the information. And of course, you have a processor. So the act applies to the public and the private sector and the government. It doesn't apply to personal data which is obtained or used for matters relating to national security. It only applies to data controllers who are connected to the Bahamas. So a data controller is an ordinary resident, a company incorporated or registered in the Bahamas, or an individual who maintains an office or branch or agency practice in the Bahamas. A data controller is not established in the Bahamas, but uses equipment in this jurisdiction for processing data that is not restricted to data in transit. So if you are a data controller, and you have personal data, the law says the data should be collected and used fairly and by lawful means. It has to be accurate and kept up to date. It has to be kept for specified purposes. It should be adequate, relevant, and not excessive in relation to the purpose for which it is kept. The data should not be disclosed in a manner that is inconsistent to the purpose for which it is kept. It should not be kept for longer than is necessary, except where the data is historical, research, or statistical data. And the data should be kept securely from unauthorized access, alteration, disclosure, destruction, or accidental loss. So the onus has been put on the data controller to actually protect the information that they have. And you as an individual, you can actually sue that data controller for your personal data if it falls outside the remit of the Data Protection Act. An individual has the right of access to personal data kept on him, according to the Act under Section 8, except where the personal data is kept for the purposes of preventing, detecting, or investigating offenses, prosecution, tax collection, or assessment. All such personal data is prejudicial to the security or maintenance of good order in a prison or detention center. So notice how that act is written. Because if you have information, and as you can see, the government is putting the whole tax system in one, which means that they will now have the right to get your personal data if they have an issue with taxes. The right of access does not apply to legislation for the protection of individuals against financial loss arising from dishonesty or malpractice. Legal professional privilege matters relating to the protection of the international relations of the country, statistical research, or backup data. The Act provides an individual with the right of rectification or erasure for personal data that is inaccurate. An individual is also afforded the right to prohibit the processing of personal data for the purposes of direct marketing. The data controller has a statutory duty of care to the data subject imposed upon him. And the data subject may bring a lawsuit against the data controller for breach of his statutory duty of care where applicable. So as you can see now, when a lot of people are shredding files, they now call for the shredding company, and it comes in a big truck.
Yes.
Right. And that's all of that came about because of the Data Protection Act. Because before they put it in boxes, they'll shred it. You used to see it flying all about on Market Street, all over the place. But that cannot happen anymore. Yes, it used to be.
I remember I used to see Sunrise shredding through the corner by Clotton. That's like Charlotte House.
Yes,
Clotton
yes, yeah. It goes to most of the banks doing the shredding. But you never used to see that before. Because I remember you see plastic bags of bank information all over the place.
That's ridiculous.
Yes. So that act came in. Once that act came into effect, then the shredding people made a lot of money. Still making it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So some protection may be overridden in the following circumstances: in the interest of national security, for the purposes of criminal investigation, protection of international relations of the country, to prevent injury, damages, or loss to a person or property, any disclosure required by enactment of law or the enforcement of a court order, any disclosure required for the purpose of obtaining legal advice or required as part of legal proceedings, any disclosure made to the data subject concerning to a person acting on his behalf, or any disclosure made at the request or consent of the data subject or person acting on his behalf. I can't remember the name of the data commissioner, but there is one now.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. Yes. The commissioner has the power to issue information, enforcement, and prohibition notices, appoint authorized officers for the purposes of inspection and examination, restrict the transfer of personal data to jurisdiction that do not provide equivalent individual data protection. I can't see if I can remember his name. I should have written it down. There is one. Shame on you, you don't know who it is.
It's a shame.
I is a. Let me see if I can find his name. I had his name, you know. They sent me this website. But they asking me for a password. I don't want a password. Oh, I had his name, you know. Request. I can't find it. I should have written it down. I saw his name. But they do come to your office and make presentations. You know that, right?
No.
Yeah, they come to your place of work and they could do a presentation on the data protection.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
I've never seen it happen. They do
Oh
it
yeah, they
mostly
do
to
it.
they do it mostly to the banks, eh?
They could do it anywhere.
Okay.
Yeah. You could let me see. They have a speaking engagement policy. Their policy states the commissioner welcomes requests to speak to meetings, seminars, educational and religious bodies on data protection issues. The following policy has been drawn up to ensure that organizations who request the service will be aware of the criteria adopted by the commissioner's office in determining its response. The engagement is to convey the commissioner's thinking and guidance on data protection issues, to assist bodies in complying with the law, to help organizations identify issues they need to consider in relation to data protection, to obtain and identify views and concerns from organizations and other interested groups on data protection issues, provide issues regarding data protection. So when considering whether to accept an invitation to speak, the following factors will help the commissioner. Whether some of the attending the event will be persons responsible for developing policy on data protection issues, whether keynote speech or similar level of contribution is required. So they actually come to your institution and speak about data protection.
I see a name here, Sharmi Farrington Austin. Is that
No.
Oh, they changed?
She left.
Okay.
She left. It's not her.
Okay.
No, it's not her. It's a man now.
I see a bald head man.
I know, he had balls. He look young. He's young.
Michael Wright? Michael Wright?
Yeah, I think that's him. Yes, that's him.
Okay.
That's him. That's him. But you could actually write to him and they will come and speak about data protection. And also give you some examples of breaches or potential breach. Yeah.
Okay. I learned something today.
Yeah. That's the only thing you learn all day today?
No, I mean.
Yeah, that's his name. Michael Wright. Yeah,
okay.
Michael Wright. He's the commissioner.
I didn't know they had a commissioner.
Well, they do have a commissioner.
All right.
Let me see, this article here says it's 2019. I guess nothing happened after that. It says here 10% spike in data breaches for banking customers.
Mm. That's all the teeth in the thing going on, eh? I know.
Why you don't stop? How dare you say such things? The Bahamas Data Protection Commissioner has recorded a 10% hike in the number of data breach complaints by commercial bank account holders year over year, as efforts to increase public awareness of the issue continue. It is a global upsurge in breaches of personal data by hackers and online criminals that has not bypassed the Bahamas, admits Commissioner Michael Wright. He explained that there was a need to continually attend conferences and ongoing training sessions just to keep pace with data protection and privacy concerns around the world, particularly that which may affect this jurisdiction. So he's talking about the hackers.
Yeah.
And then credit, debit, and credit card skimming.
Yes, so the phishing and thing. Oh God.
Yeah. So in another class this week, I brought up the Bahamian case that was just done by last year on the client who had sued Scotiabank for missing funds from her account.
Okay.
On two different occasions. The first occasion they said they will not pay. The second time it occurred, she went to them and she said, I changed my card. Like, as you all know, I was not on this island, but my card was still being used. And they said, again, they will not pay.
No.
They said it was her fault because when they look in the system, her PIN was used. The only person who used your PIN was you. She
It's
said, but I
you.
was not on the island. So how could I be using my PIN overseas and on the island at the same time? And I only have one card issued to me.
Yeah.
They refused to pay. So she took them to court and she won.
Good, good.
It was skimming.
Yeah.
It was skimming. But they were saying, the students I was talking to was saying it had to be an inside job because how do they know to use the card? The first time they used it was when she couldn't find it home. She had put it in one of her drawers and she couldn't find it. They used it then. The second time they used it is when she traveled.
It had to be inside.
Yeah. The first time they took off 17,500.
What? And
The
so much?
second time, yes, the second time they took off 10,000. Yeah.
Well,
So
well, I know she get her money, plus she get their money and take their money out the bank. And take her money out the bank.
well, they ain't gone to that far, but they say she got her money back and damages.
Good.
And interest.
Good for her.
Yeah. So the next couple of pages you could read, but it's only for information purposes. And
Okay.
that's the other act, the Computer Misuse Act.
Okay.
And all it does is it says that when the computer is being misused, they have 6 different offenses under the act. One is unauthorized access to computer material. There's a fine for that. Access with the intent to commit or facilitate the commission of a crime. Unauthorized modification of computer material. Unauthorized use or interception of computer service. Unauthorized obstruction of use of computer. Unauthorized disclosure of access code. And so that last there's one when you have your PIN numbers. By law, you're not permitted to give your access code to anybody.
Anybody, right?
There is a fine for that. But mostly this is about the use of the computer in terms of being able to penetrate any organization system, either to get information or to transfer information. And the fines are quite hefty, as you see when you read through $10,000.
$20,000.
Yeah. And in terms of 5 years in jail. Yeah. So that's what this is about. I haven't seen any cases yet that have been tried under this act. Yeah. But most likely this will be like for hackers, but we've only had like skimmers. Yeah, not no real people who break into the system and took out the person's confidential information. No. No, we haven't had that. No, not at all. All right. So it's just me and you, like I said, right?
I know, the last man standing.
Yeah. No, Blair will be back. Blair will be back.
Is Catherine still in class? Who's left? Just who all?
Yeah, let me tell you. I'll tell you who I got exams from. I got Kadrin, Kendra.
Me. That's me.
Yeah, I just got by my list.
Oh.
Jahil, JL, and Blair.
Oh, only 4 of us?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So we're gonna get those today, eh? Results. You know?
For a week for the funeral.
Oh, Miss, I didn't use result for a minute.
Oh, break up it. Oh,
Yeah.
Lolita and Aniska.
Yeah.
They had a funeral to attend. Remember when she said that Lolita family member passed away?
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, right? Yeah. So I'm waiting on those 2. And who the next one was? There's 2 other persons.
I spoke with Marquita last week. She said she was not feeling well.
Oh, yeah. I haven't heard from Marquita either. I wonder what happened. I can send a note. I can text her.
Yeah. She said she was going to message you or call you, but I don't know.
Yeah, she probably ain't feeling good. I hope she had COVID.
She didn't say. She just said she wasn't feeling well.
I can find out. I'll find out. Yeah. So.
Oh, so you say we get the results then? I didn't.
Oh, I have my results, but I was waiting
Oh,
on. But only you once I could give you yours. Hey.
yeah. You can send it. You can send it to me.
Okay. I can let the guy in the office. I'm gonna give
Okay.
these to Miss Dean, and then she's gonna scan them to you all.
Oh, I thought you send them to us directly. Okay.
No, I don't have no scanner, and I tried to do it with my phone, and my phone wouldn't work.
So we can wait till
Yeah,
Tuesday.
yeah, you ain't gonna
I don't.
die.
I don't want you to tell me over this
The
live
phone ain't.
what I
No, we'll
thought.
scan it to you. You'll see it, because I also have to scan the cases.
Oh gosh.
Yes, you'll see it.
I just don't know if it's good or bad.
If it's good or bad. Okay, tell me
Yeah.
what is good.
I don't know.
I do know.
Use,
You tell me.
use my card, Miss Archer.
Mm. But you're looking for good, so tell me what's good.
I can't remember the grading scheme. I just don't know if I did okay.
Let me see if I would call this okay.
Oh Lord.
No, I'm just saying. I'm just trying to be. Mm, yeah, I'd say it's okay.
Okay, that give me
Yeah,
some comfort.
yeah, it's okay. You'll see. You'll see a couple points. Now, some people, out of these 4 that I got, and I have 4 more to get. Some people thought that shareholders are fiduciary duty. Gone wrong.
The directors.
Yeah, but they put directors and shareholders, and they did it on quite a few of their answers.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So obviously they didn't understand.
Yeah, I just have to get through this capstone now.
Oh, it ain't that bad. And y'all asked for multiple choice, but y'all surely couldn't get them answers though.
Ma?
Y'all say, oh, multiple choice.
Oh Lord.
Some people get 4 out of 10. But anyhow, that wasn't you.
Lord.
Some people got 4 out of 10.
Oh,
I tell y'all, don't ask for multiple choice, man. No, y'all don't listen to me.
I know, because that multiple choice is hard. Just like you have to know.
You have to
Listen,
know.
I said, Miss Archer think she's smart, you know.
I
I
tell
know
y'all,
you.
don't ask for multiple choice. Y'all die for it. Die. I must have it. Okay, well, have it.
Yes,
Have it.
you
Okay,
fix
so
us
you
right
get
up.
your thing on.
Okay.
Yes, I did. Wait till the final come.
Oh Lord, Miss Archer, I
Yeah.
gotta pass. I
All
have
right.
to pass.
You will pass. You will pass. Next week, hopefully, I'll have the other 3, and then I'll just go through the answers. I may not have marked theirs yet. I'll try if I get it. If they send it in time,
But you can
I'll
still
go
send us.
through these.
So you can
I
still
can send
email
yours
us
on
our
Tuesday.
grade. As you can
Yeah,
still
I can
email us.
send it on Tuesday. I can send it along with the cases.
No, I mean you can still email us the grade we got. Or no, you don't want to do that.
No, I can do that. I can send it.
Okay.
I can scan it to you so you can look through. Because I may have missed something and then the grade will change. I've recorded
Okay.
what I put on it, but then you could look
Okay.
through it and then you could say, well, I missed this, or I probably
Okay.
misunderstood, and then you could explain.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
So enjoy your holiday. Go and work on your capstone. That time is running up.
It is running out.
Yeah, you gotta work fast.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Miss Archer.
Okay, you're most welcome. Next week
Okay.
class should be a short class in terms of the lecture, because it's just rounding up from the compliance perspective. So hopefully if I have it, like I say, we'll go over the midterm.
Okay.
Yeah. You'll have
Okay.
time to do that without going over the time. Okay?
All right. And enjoy
All right.
your weekend and holiday.
You too.
All right.
Okay, bye.
Thanks. Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right.